How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the first video of the Vue 3 Fundamentals. This is a course that I had taken notes out of this a year ago, almost a year ago, February 2024. And right now, what I want to do is to understand now deeply what is the problem that Vue solves. Because back then, when I did this course, I actually take notes out of this, but I didn't know what I was doing, what I was trying to learn. Just besides to actually write all of this Vue applications and understand that actually this is a cool way of writing user interface. Right now there are actually much more less boilerplate way to actually build this kind of applications. But the thing here is that with Vue, it has now a particular approach, unlike React. So because in other videos that I have recorded myself and actually take notes out of that to understand is what is React, what is the React course values, and then look at things like how you can deploy your React application to productions, and how you can use now things like tailwinds and TypeScript. What is the value proposition of TypeScript in React applications, as well as Redux. What is Redux? What is the problem that Redux is trying to solve? As well as what is this RTK, which is this new natural, or I will argue that this is the natural step of Redux to move on. As a way to now is eliminate a bunch of ceremony that we need to do when it comes to actually set the state management in our applications using is Redux, and how can we now make it much more friendly with TypeScript, and also easy to add some extensions, middlewares here. So after we went through all of that, which is something that I continuously looking, especially of how we're going to handle is the concurrency in our applications. But in today's video, I want to know is what is the problem that this particular library actually solves, because at the end of the day, React is just very good at creating is all of this user interface and managing the state of this particularly small piece of interfaces. However, when it comes to actually compose all of those into this render tree, and when you try to manage is the state of each one of them, that's when things started to get a little bit quite complicated in terms of how you're going to now manage all of this state change in a way that is maintainable, readable, and predictable. Okay? So, because Vue now assumes the aims of Vue is to be now this reactive rendering system, unlike React, which is a now user interface, is a rendering UI elements. It's for rendering UI elements. So let's take a look now at this dive deep into Vue, because this is also that a particular company wants to hire us, and they want to see if we are capable of to provide solutions in Vue, especially Vue 3, right? So let's get into this. This course is taught by Ben Hong. Shout out to Ben Hong, by the way. I don't know if he's currently working at Netlify. Not sure. Maybe. Who knows? Oh, it's not part of the Angular team. Why am I not surprised? Staff Dev Engineering, Vue.js core team, Angular team. Oh, it's not part of the Angular team. And Obsidian, the private and flexible writing application that adapt to the way you think. to the way you think. For help and deeper discussion, you got it. Says. What the French toast is option here? 2,000 plugins. The private and flexible writing app that adapt the way you think. Well, anyway. So that's interesting. So it's one of the Knox ambassador, Angular, and Vue.js, right? So, all right. It also has a YouTube channel. Interesting. Interesting. Relationship between bookmark and notes. Okay. Building dashboard with Obsidians. Okay. Interesting. So very, very interesting. very, 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 very interesting. Okay. So 3 years ago.
With another build with Ben, and what we're going to do today is we're going to pick up where we left off last time, where we successfully got.
All right.
So
that's quite interesting.
welcome back, everyone, to the second episode of the TLDR series. At events all around the world, and then suddenly transitioning to this fully remote setting, I can be the first one to tell you that it's been quite a difficult transition. So I wanted to share some of my experiences.
This is 4 years ago.
We now face as speakers is that rather than speaking to a room full of attendees and people, and even though it might feel a little bit awkward at first, I assure you, temptations, most of us are used. Unlike in-person events, because it is a remote event, I know that it can feel like
all of these are remote here. Interesting. Okay, that was interesting. That was very interesting. And then he stopped uploading 8 months ago.
Welcome everyone. We're back for another session of Obsidian Office Hours, and for this week we are themed with a bunch of questions I actually received.
Okay.
Jade, so shout out to Jade for inspiring a lot of the questions.
All right, interesting. Okay, good. Benko San Vue.js from a Vue core team member. Okay, that's interesting. That's very, very, very interesting. Very okay. Interesting. Okay, all right. And the Git universe. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Interesting. Holy moly. All right. NG Jones, especially Java champion. That's interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Okay, cool. So this is the preview of this course. All right.
Hello, I'm Ben Hong, Vue core team member, senior staff developer experience engineer at Netlify, and Knox ambassador. I created this course on Vue because Vue is one of the most popular and approachable frameworks, and it is designed to enable you to build powerful apps that easily scale.
Allegedly, in theory, right? So it enables us to build powerful applications that scale. These two concepts here is something especially important as you build now your as you produce something. Scalability is something that is in demand. So the economy and the most of the time the economists and the central planners, politicians and economists, even ourselves, we have now reached to the consensus that as a way to now move forward in this era and to provide now more and to provide uh, assets, products that are needed as we now grow and grow and grow as a civilization. All right, let's go to now for a more close relationship. As we started to now have perhaps more children's or more kids and grandkids, and as our family started to grow and grow and grow, we recognize that we need to actually produce not only for ourselves but also for them, at least at the initial years, right? Until they can do that for their own. So the idea here is recognize that scalability is something important, is something needed. That in the context of software, if we are now able to not only build systems that are easy to maintain but also to scale, a lot of the time that'll be the holy grail of that. So the idea here is that by using this particularly frameworks, whether it's React or Vue, and in our case we're looking Vue, to actually understand what is the problem that it solves, what is the value proposition of of these frameworks. That's the reason why we are here, by the way. So let me actually put it here, which is bang on. All right, this start is almost 2 years ago. Vue 3, by the way. That's awesome. And here we go. So let's get into this. So let's get into this introduction here as a way to understand what is the intro here.
Welcome everyone to the complete intro to Vue 3. My name is Ben Hong, and I'm excited to spend the next couple days with you as we.
Well, actually, because I don't want to receive any flag from this, only gonna take some notes out of this, because yes, I really receive a flag when they tell me, hey, you can record yourself. You can record yourself while you're learning this. This is not what is going to happen. This is part of the copyright. So you are now is broadcasting a contest without our permissions, and that's something against our terms of condition and TOS. So that's right.
We go over the fundamental.
So what I'm going to do is just take notes out of that as a way to recap. How do we get
here? Vue would just get you all set up so that you feel confident trying out Vue for your next project. All right, so as far as a little bit of a welcome, a little fun fact I usually like to use is I'm a big fan of amusement park rides. So this is the one from Orlando, Universal Studios. And so the one I really want to get up though is if you ever go to Disneyland, check out because this is the classic Jurassic Park one. They've redone the one in Disneyland to be the Jurassic World theme. And so they've done a lot of really cool 3D effects and stuff. Highly, highly recommend it. If you're having trouble finding me in the back, there I am, raising my arms. But with that aside, a little bit about me. I'm a senior staff developer experience and technologies as well as a map platform. All right, so if you're wondering who...
¿Cómo ser Google Developer Expert? Esa es una pregunta que me hacéis a menudo en las redes sociales a través de sociales como @Carlos. hacer una entrevista para cada una. Además, ARC no te deja solo, te ofrece apoyo para ayudarte a destacar en la plataforma, y también en el... Si trabajas en Google, no puede ser un GDE o GDE, como decimos en España. Es simplemente un reconocimiento que da la empresa a personas que son expertas o que tienen experiencia en un determinado área del desarrollo de software y de tecnologías de Google. El programa de Experts forma parte, conoces los Google Developer Groups, o GDG, o GDE, también con los GDG, y sirve para dar visibilidad a mujeres en la tecnología. Desde hace tecnología de Google, Open Source, Web te reconozca como Developer Expert en una tecnología. Pues bien, hay diferentes fases. Lo primero de todo es que tienes que ser una persona implicada con la comunidad, es decir, que compartas el conocimiento que tienes sobre determinado área. En mi caso, llevo desde 2014-2015 compartiendo contenido sobre JavaScript, desarrollo web, Node.js, React, etc. Todo muy relacionado con las tecnologías web. Estas contribuciones de compartir conocimiento pueden hacerse a través de artículos, posts en blogs, código open source, respuestas en Stack Overflow, ponencias como speaker en determinados eventos, un poco de todo. No hace falta que sea estrictamente de todo, puedes destacar en un área y en las otras no. Por ejemplo, en mi caso, anteriormente era muy de escribir posts en blogs, pero poco a poco, con las nuevas tecnologías y las nuevas tendencias, pues estoy pasando más al formato vídeo. Una vez eres una persona que sí que contribuye y que lo hace desinteresadamente, una persona de Google o una persona que sea Google Developer Expert de la categoría que sea, puede nominarte al programa, dentro de una categoría que se acomode al tipo de contenido que sueles compartir. Aunque aquí también hay diversos factores. Cada vez hay más experts y algunas categorías pues tienen muchos más experts que otras. Entonces, dependiendo del tiempo, dependiendo del momento, puede ser que la categoría para la que puedas aplicar esté llena y no admitan nuevos experts, o sea una categoría muy reciente y sea más sencillo poder entrar en el programa. Entonces, como digo, depende de muchos factores. No solo porque una persona te pueda nominar ya vas a entrar al programa. Eso, como digo, depende de muchas cosas y del contribuir a la comunidad. Entonces, pasas. Caso para Web Technologies, la entrevista fue en inglés con un ingeniero de Google que trabaja en Holanda, y aquí pues depende un poco de la persona. En mi caso también fue un poco entrevista para conocerme un poco, y luego digamos que hubo una pequeña prueba. No tengas miedo porque no es una prueba técnica como si fuera para entrar a una empresa, y mucho menos una prueba técnica de Google. Simplemente quiere ver si te manejas bien con las tecnologías para las cuales te van a nominar y te van a proponer como expert. En mi caso, para ponerte un ejemplo, pues simplemente que eligiera una web de un e-commerce y que la analizase, que utilizara las Chrome Developer Tools y todos los conocimientos de web performance, y le diera pues unos insights, sugerencias sobre cómo se podría optimizar o cómo se podría mejorar el rendimiento y la carga de la web. Simplemente quería ver, pues eso, controlaba un poco de las tecnologías web. Una vez terminas estas dos entrevistas, ya la persona encargada del programa de experts para tu región, en mi caso Europa, revisa el feedback que le han dado tanto el expert que te ha entrevistado en primera instancia como la persona de Google que te ha entrevistado en la segunda prueba. También se revisa qué contribuciones has hecho pues de un año atrás hasta el momento en el que te nominaron. Porque, como digo muchas veces, para ser expert, digamos que tienes que ser expert antes de aplicar para expert, ¿no? No esperes a tener el reconocimiento de Google para empezar a compartir tus conocimientos. Es algo que deberías hacer antes de contribuir. Puedes contribuir al medianamente grande y no podías.
This workshop is for. This workshop, because this is a complete intro to Vue, covers people looking to get started with their first JavaScript framework for basically building web user interfaces, all the way to people who are looking to either learn about what makes Vue special and really gain the skills necessary so that if they want to try using Vue on their next project, they are certainly more than welcome to. And of course, everyone in between. So it looks like we have a good gamut here of different experiences. And so yeah, hope to cover all that.
So, well, this workshop is for everyone that is new to the framework. Okay, let's gonna put it here. The goal of this. Okay, which is people to get started with their first JavaScript framework. Newbies, I will argue. I'll call this newbies with Vue, JS. Or people who want to learn about what makes Vue special and gain the skill to start building with it on their next project. Exactly. Newbies, exactly. It's like, so understand how Vue, understand the value proposition of Vue for newcomers, or expert advanced or veterans in building user interface, right? The TLDR of all of this is it. So understand the value proposition of Vue for newcomers or veterans in building user interface. Let's get into this.
In this workshop today. All right, so a couple things to know about this workshop. Some things you probably want to know if you're field in this workshop, because after all, while there's that'll be installing the dependencies with and going to be living at this repo, which is github.com/bencodezen, and then /complete intro to Vue 3 workshop. So if you just go to /bencodezen and repos, you should see it at the very top. And if it looks a little barren in there, don't worry, we're going to be populating it as we go throughout the workshop. All right, as far as what you can expect from the workshop.
Okay, so this is the goal, right? And tools or prerequisites, prerequisites. Okay. So prerequisites, you got Vue 1, that's right. So this is now the goal of this, followed by the prerequisites. No, but it's requisite. Why not? Prerequisites. Okay. Prerequisites. So prerequisites here, okay, and that'll be that. Familiarity is like familiarity with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Also with terminal and Git, basically is that.
I'm a big fan of the workshop format of learn, question, and apply.
LQA.
So basically, we'll be going through the process of starting with the learn step, which is every time we have a new concept, we'll be going through explanations and examples so you can start getting exposed to what's going on. Then there'll always be opportunities to ask questions. So if any clarifications, what ifs, that's a great time to kind of get in there to start engaging with the material. And finally, arguably the most important step in my mind is that we go ahead and apply what we just learned. So there'll be lots of opportunity to do exercises, and most importantly, I encourage you to play and experiment with it. I'll provide some guidance regarding some things you can do with the exercise, but the more you kind of get into it and play around with it, the stickier it'll be for you when it comes to learning it. And finally, even though we're here talking about Vue, an important thing to remember is that all code is compromised. So, earlier we heard from people coming from different frameworks. Different frameworks have made different choices and trade-offs along the way as their authors sort of created those things. So just know that whatever my opinion is, I encourage you to question and or disagree with it, because after all, your opinion and experience matters. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that you choose what's best for you and your team in order to serve your customers.
The TLDR is like choose what works best for you and your team. So this is learn, question, and apply, as we can see here. So yeah, this particular framework or workshop format is something that we most of the time we learn. It's like we learn the conceptual aspect, then we can see some couple of examples, and then we practice on those examples as a way to actually get yourself familiar with by asking questions during that clarification what if, and then is when you apply your knowledge by using this exercise and playing experiments. All right, so let's get into this.
Your opinion and experience matters. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that you choose what's best for you and your team in order to serve your customers. So, story time. When I first started getting started with coding, I was one of those people who thought that JavaScript, well, in order to know JavaScript, you need to learn Java. And this was back in the day where I was learning from an O'Reilly book. I picked up like an HTML book that my dad had kind of left around. And then so when I saw the JavaScript, I was like, I picked up the Java book instead, and then I got really confused, and then I gave up, and I was discouraged for many, many years. But then when I started getting back into it, then I started learning, oh, okay, so it's different. And I started working with jQuery, and then around this time frame, which was starting to become really big. So of course, Angular at this point had really started to get really popular at that point. And then React came on the scene. And so at this point, I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to get my skills up to date? And so I kind of worked with all of these, and React was the one I'd really been pushing for at one of my old jobs when I really first started getting hands-on experience with frameworks. Because after all, this was, at least as far as the statistics show, the most popular one, and it gave me a lot of opportunities to practice JavaScript, so why not? But what's interesting is that at this company, even though I was pushing for React, I had my team going, well, there's this new kid on the block called Vue, and this is around the time Vue 2 had come out, that we should really check this out. It's supposed to be basically just as performant as React, and it has a more approachable way of building apps. And for me, I was like, I want to learn the most popular thing, right, the most cutting edge, so I was incredibly resistant to it. And so part of the reason I tell this story is because I want you to know that this is where I came from, as far as like experience working with all these different frameworks, and then from this context of switching from React, Angular, into the Vue ecosystem. And yeah, so we'll go from here.
Well, this is just to describe this a little bit of the overview. So how do we get here? Is that how? This is not okay. Let me put it here, the table of content. Or the core structure. Core structure. Okay, there you get it. You get the introduction. Introduction. Yeah, you got the introduction, the or the overview. Okay, the overview, and then you have now the watchers and computer properties. Watchers and computer properties, right? View tools. Okay, view tools. View tools, and we're gonna also combine and compare that with React as well. View tools, and then how we can fetch data. So fetching data, the way of how now React works, and also how Vue works when it comes to do that. The composition API, interesting. The composition API, which is something that I quite composition API, something that I'm quite familiar with, and I really love it. Styling components, say styling components. All right. Something that I'm quite aware of this. Routing and deployment. Routing and deployment, something that of course I am used to that, the routing and deployment, especially with React and how we're gonna do that in Vue, all right? And then wrapping up, right? Wrapping up. Okay, let's get into this, shall we? Which is the overview. This is just to explain as a way to understand Vue. We need to understand how do we get here. Once we truly get it, you will embrace complexity based on your needs. All right, based on your needs. That is also a reason why we have jQuery applications in Angular for more robust and enterprise applications, as well as React, right? But all of this is because each one of those companies wants to actually push their business out there.
Okay, so just to make sure we clarify the simple definition of what Vue is, I think the simplest way to think about it is it's a JavaScript framework for building web user interfaces. That's basically what it is. It can certainly be used to power other things.
So is this one, right? So what is view? So what is in view? That's right. So what is view? And then why is view? So is a library. Yep. It's a library to build user interfaces. Pretty much like, because is a JavaScript library to build user interface. However, what is the difference with other frameworks?
You know, now that we have frameworks that can help you build mobile apps, you can certainly use it underlying, but primarily it's used to build web interfaces. Now, of course, the big question here is why Vue.js? Why would people consider using Vue? The first thing is that it's designed to be approachable. And what does that mean when we talk about approachable? And so this is taken from the docs, in that Vue builds on top of standard HTML, CSS, and JavaScript with intuitive API and world-class documentation.
So it did say that it is approachable. Why Vue? This is now the why Vue. Okay, but it doesn't answer the question here, because a lot of this workshop is okay. It say, hey, this is now the selling points, the sales pitch. It is approachable, it is performance, it is versatile, it is backed by this community first. So the value proposition of this, which is something that I put here because you can talk a lot of this and actually not reach, and actually don't say enough. Okay. But first is sit on existing web standard like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, providing useful APIs, and world-class documentation. So this is unlike React, that is now a framework for building user interface by using now this particular syntax, the JSX syntax, which is not natively to the web. But now Vue say, hey, no, let's going to actually use this HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as a way to build our user interface and the existing APIs. Okay, so unlike now React, where you have to create your application using, for example, React.create element, which is wrapped around the DOM, specifically the documents, where you actually in there can specify what is the part of the node, as well as it's pretty much this one. It's pretty much the create element here, right, from the document. When you say, hey, this will be the tag name, and this will be is the option that you're gonna pass here. So this tag name that you're gonna pass is now a node name, okay, which can be null, or you can pass an element, all right? And this is just a couple of examples of how you can do that. Like, hey, create elements. And again, these elements, to actually recap the class hierarchy of how now the DOM is made of the let me see if there is a class DOM class hierarchy. Okay. For example, in the MDN, no. Fundamental data types, but not about is the hierarchy, right? It doesn't say anything related to the hierarchy. Class hierarchy common DOM API. Okay. So as we can see here, it all starts with the node, and then you have now attributes and character data. That's very interesting. Where this node can have is document. It also can have is document fragment, document type, and element. So as you can see, there is a lot of elements here that you can use with, right? So I'm start is with the DOM here. Let me actually is this another example here, which is from my front-end system design here, right? When I say, hey, this is the DOM hierarchy. There you got it. This is the DOM API class hierarchy, right? When you get the DOM, this is quite interesting to actually understand this a little bit more. Interface hierarchy, okay? You got all of this, but the DOM directly, those properties that comes directly from the DOM, because all of this is from the CSS, DOM CSS, DOM CSS, DOM events. But when you want to interact it with the DOM, which is actually this tree-like data structure, is from here. So the DOM now actually, it all starts with the node here. This is a very interesting thing that we can put it here, class hierarchy. So this is the class hierarchy DOM from Oracle. That's interesting. Okay. But it all starts with the node, right? And then from the node, which is the abstract base class, which act as a blueprint for all of these other nodes that actually implement that interface. So for example, text node or elements or HTML documents. An HTML document now has a window associated to that. And the text node is just a text representation of this node. And the element has, as you can see here, the element type, okay? So you can have that character data, a comment, the document, document fragment, and document type, but also the elements here. And here in the element is where you can have a huge amount of type of elements, right? Most of the time, the most commons are the HTML elements. That you have all of these elements here. The HTML elements, the HTML, the HTML elements, the HTML tables. Again, all of these are just part of the, and also you have something called entity that allows you to access now to this data as well. But also text as well. But the point of this is to make yourself familiar with this, right? That's what I put it here. And that's what I mentioned to create element, which is something that you're doing behind the scenes with React. React create elements, right? React create elements, actually that's what it does behind the scenes. Is let's say, hey, let's go to now use this wrapper around the DOM to actually implement now this. But here I'm going to extend now the functionality here, which means that I can now define what is the type of this element that I'm going to create, okay? Following by its props, what is the props that I'm getting from, okay? As well as the children here, which is, hey, what'll be is the content node that I'm going to show, or if that contains more and more nodes. This particular thing, which is part of the basics of React, and how important it is to recap ourselves when we have to do this kind of thing, when we actually going to provide our service, As you can see here, the type is a function, a class with a special component like fragment. Okay. This is now how you can create this user interface. All right. And as a way to make our life much more easy when it comes to write this user interface, because with not only is writing is static HTML elements, but also is to adding some functionality to it. So having this now JSX, which is this JavaScript extend syntax, is much more convenient when it comes to actually add interactivity to our elements. So instead of actually creating this with create elements with React, we just say, hey, let's go to now its return is a JSX element for that. So again, this is just the basic stuff. And they say legacy React APIs because this is something that you can still use it. Create elements and what it's doing behind the scenes. So far so good, right? So far so good. So that's one of the reasons why they say that this is approachable, because it's not using its HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I have experience with that. It is also performance, in theory, allegedly.
Mark has a post on redoing to-do MVC and vanilla JavaScript. And so, you might not need a framework. And I say that as a core team member. But that said,
completely, man, completely. You might not need a framework, especially when you're going to build your user interface.
Vue is designed from the ground up to be a reactive, compiler, optimized rendering system.
But this is when they say now, and this is something important for me, right? So Vue is designed from the ground up to be reactive compiler, to be a reactive compiler optimized rendering system that rarely require manual optimizations. Reactive, compile, optimize rendering systems. So it means that instead of you having to create all of this user interface and then keep track of when this particular user interface changed over time, then you need to worry about when you're going to put those elements, when you're going to put your state in that particular user interface, and when you want to lift the state up, how you're going to do that as a way to actually don't impact the other components that may have access to. And this is when now things like props drilling comes in. But the point here is that React is just for building user interfaces. It was not designed for building user interface at scale. Even though that you might have used, for example, now some of these tools that they say, hey, let me now actually handle all of this user interface for you. So for example, all of this button for you. I think this must be written in Angular. Oh, in Vue? Oh my God. That's interesting. Is using Vue in Redux. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. Google Docs is using now, they ditch Angular? Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. Holy moly. Holy moly. Oh my. Oh my. That's not for up to laugh. Oh my God. Holy moly. Jesus. They're using is this. Oh my God. They're using is this. Oh my God. Anyway. Holy moly. And they have all of these things. And I get it why they're using is this and that kind of thing and so on and so forth. That makes a lot of sense. Wow, and they don't even run. I get it, man. Anyway, that was okay. So Google Docs actually is using is Vue. There is a reason for that. Well, Wikipedia, in fact, is using now Vue as well. Oh my God. Anyway, so again, this is now a reactive. This particular concept is important. It is now a reactive compiler optimized, compiler based React rendering systems.
Rarely requires manual optimization. And so when we come to performance, especially the larger your apps get, a lot of times people are very curious about how we can basically prevent ourselves from creating bottlenecks in our performance because we don't understand maybe some of the core primitives about JavaScript. And that's what frameworks allow for us, right? They abstract some of that performance away, so they say, we'll take care of that, you just write your business logic, and we'll go from there.
Yes. They say, okay, this is performance, okay? A lot of the time when we need to build these large applications, people creating all of these bottlenecks because they don't know how their tools work, okay? Especially the core primitive of JavaScript. And that's the next level of competency for JavaScript developers, is you must understand how these tools work for you, especially to handle now specific use cases, whether it's by writing user interface or by dealing with the concurrency that may happen in your applications. So again, this is now a call to arms to any JavaScript developers that is out there, and they now are providing this particular service to companies as a way to be very tactical and strategic when it comes to first creating this user interface, maintain it, so design the user interface, maintain it, as well as handling the asynchronicity, the concurrency in your asynchronous programming. So this is now several aspects that here as front-end developers we have to deal with. It's not only front-end design, but also maintain your application with the latest things that we have to do, and deal with concurrency in a very strategic and tactical way. Oh my God, this is the TLDR of all of this. Be able to know how you design your front-end applications, how you maintain it, and then how you handle is the how you develop a strategy to design your how do you develop a strategy and tactics to develop your front-end system applications, how you maintain them for large applications, for enterprise UI development, and also how you're going to handle is concurrency in your asynchronous programming. These are the three areas that a lot of our people will going to now, or a lot of this company are going to pay for. Hey, can you design the systems, okay, in a way that is maintainable and also dealing with the concurrency of our application here? System designs, maintainability, and concurrency. Let's move on.
And so you might have noticed too, I'm not putting any sort of charts or numbers as far as sizes go at this moment, because one of the things that Vue and I think a lot of frameworks are doing right now is that they're always trying to find ways to continue to be smaller, right? And they're learning from each other as we go. So when you're deciding whether or not Vue is like the performant framework for you, especially if you're going to like migrate an enterprise level app, you're probably going to want to do some benchmarks of your own, because there are going to be different contexts to why you might be making the decision, because different bottlenecks exist within different contexts. Okay, the other thing is that Vue is versatile. So what does that mean? So via the docs, it's a rich, incremental, adoptable ecosystem that scales between a library and a full-featured framework. And so for anyone who's gotten into discussion, usually developers get very heated about the library versus framework argument, right? And that was a big thing for React too, is React a library? When is it a framework? Basically for Vue, what I will tell you is that it can be used basically as a CDN, basically as a drop-in library to
Exactly.
your page, which we'll play around with Justin a little bit, or it can be blown up to a fully like framework project that you're used to expect, or you've come to get familiar with when it comes to front-end applications. And so that's basically the difference, I would say, between the two. That one usually requires build tools, the other one does not. And so Vue is really good at doing that. The other thing that drew me...
So when they talk about is the approachable, by using is the existing standards of the web, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and also that is performant, by now being a reactive, compiler optimized rendering systems that a lot of the time now JavaScript developers, when they want to build this user interface, they might not know or how actually is the intrinsic nature and the primitive nature of JavaScript works and their tools. So a lot of the time what they do is to handle over all of this performance to frameworks. Again, this is a call to arms to all the JavaScript developers that we need to be competent in designing and maintaining and handling concurrency in our applications. Because what happens is that we create all of these bottlenecks, right? And if you're not careful, that's something that it can be problematic, especially in enterprise context. And it's versatile, pretty much like the React, that you can actually use React with a CDN as well. But here you can now start to use Vue as an incrementally adoptable framework by using the CDN as a way to enhance static HTML. As a way to enhance static HTML without a build step, which is something important, by just importing is the script from the CDN, which is something that you do, for example, in your jQuery applications. Hey, let me import this, and then I'm going to now write all of the things that I need to, okay? Or add web components to any pages. So, for example, some sort of widgets and that kind of things. Now starting to build a single page application. This is when the system design kicks in. What are the applications that we're about to build? Is this single page applications for example, back office applications, right? For back office back office applications, or for any application that don't rely to be indexed by any of these search engines, right? However, if you need that, well, you can go with the traditional server-side rendering as well, or this thing called now the Jamstack, which is now using is purely is JSON API and markup language. Exactly, JavaScript API and markup language, which is a modern web development architecture here. And then you have now this as a way to build all of these applications supercharged. But again, despite that this is something that you can go with, this particular architecture hasn't gained too many. This is one of them, site generator, Next.js. Next.js, Hugo, Gatsby, Docusaurus, Nox, Jekyll's, a list of static site generator for Jamstacks. Again, but this is for static site generators. Exactly, and this is now headless CMS. This is content management service. Strappy is one of them. Ghost and Directus as well. WordPress. But this now has become headless CMS. But again, this is now an architecture, and it is based on the API economy here. Client rendering, decoupling, DPR, distributed persistent rendering, and immutable deploys, Jamstack, microservice, pre-render, pre-generate, and all that kind of stuff, right? But again, the whole point of this is to don't overcomplicate stuff, all right? And the other thing here is that you can not only target with Vue is the browser, but also the CLI, the desktop, as well as mobile, and even WebLG, all right? But again, something that we also can do with React, all right? That's what we have React Native as a way to now target is mobile development, whether it's Android or iOS. Most of the time we target both of them. Yep. Yep. All right. And it's also community first because, well, frameworks like Angular are backed by Google, React by Facebook, but Vue was due to their community. And since a lot of people see value in their approach for building versatile web apps due to their reactive, compiler optimized rendering system. This is another interesting topic about the community driven, since they do what's best for the community and also rely on a lot of volunteers to give the unique perspective across the world. This is something interesting because some of the things that we look at right now on the AI, all right? So for example, on the rise of all of these collaborative models that we can make use of them is because of that. And there's some examples of actually is companies using that. Swift Tutorial is using, let me see if they still actually using that. I'm not quite sure that. Swift UI. Let me see if they're still using that. Oh, this is, it is built on Vue. All right. Quite interesting. The Swift UI tutorials. Exactly, and they show all of these elements as it is, as sequence. But you can edit this. Yeah, and they made this with Vue, exactly. That's quite interesting. So for example, Google career page is also another one that is using here. It seems they migrate to that. They're actually using Contentful, Redux, this is state management, and Lead. That's right. They're using also Marco. That's quite interesting, from the eBay. Web frameworks, Marco, Django, Laravel, and Livewire. Okay, they're using is Laravel for a combination between Laravel and Django. Holy moly! Recruiting and staffing, lever, smart recruiting and work able. That's quite interesting, man. That's a very interesting. No, Google Career is no longer using that. Perhaps soon they're using Vue, right? Vue is using exactly. It's using a Vue with Redux, right? It's using Vue with Redux. It's a state management. It's using Vue 2.6. Okay, exactly. Making a migration is a nightmare. Making a migration is a nightmare, and a lot of these companies they don't, bro. They don't. It's too expensive for them to make a migration here. L'Oréal Paris, USA. It seems that this is okay. This is now done in Vue, GSAP, Redux. It's because of that, man. It's because of that. It's because this is what is needed in ASP. It's because this is what is needed, man. It's because this is what is needed, man. And it's because this is what is needed, bro. So L'Oréal Paris, USA, Nintendo. I'm not sure if Nintendo actually used that. No, Nintendo is using React. React and Redux, and they say, and Next. Ooh, Next 12 version. I get it. I totally get it, bro. I totally get it. Oh, this code behind the scenes might be a nightmare. Or not. I don't think so. I definitely don't think so. No, I don't think so. MediaWiki is also using is that. MediaWiki is also using is Vue. Is Vue updated with PHP, bro? With PHP, they're using is now jQuery as well as Vue and Redux for as a state management. Holy moly. Very, very, very interesting here. So Wikimedia is also and make it available to the people. It is powerful, multi-language, free and open, extensible, customizable, reliable, and free of charge. Find out more, and its MediaWiki is right for you. There you got it, MediaWiki. All right, okay.
Also using Vue. If you didn't know, MediaWiki, which is like the big organization behind like Wikipedia as well as some other properties, they actually did a really long investigation into deciding which framework they would adopt going forward for their basically migration. And basically they landed on Vue, which was we were really happy to hear. And so if you're ever looking to see kind of why they did that, there's a whole paper on that. So I just wanted to at least alert you all if you're curious about like a big organization migrating to Vue. Their reasoning behind it, that is there for y'all to read.
Okay. So the value proposition of this is that Vue is a data Vue is a data event driven.
Is what do you need to know to really get started with Vue? And
The value proposition, if this is a JavaScript framework, technically speaking, Vue is a data event driven HTML interpolator. There is a lot of things going on. So it means that based on this data, right, it's going to create now this HTML document here. Most of the time, most of those frameworks behind the scenes actually are HTML interpolators. But in this case, it's data event-driven interpolator. In other words, it will update the UI with the latest change. So you can focus on building your business instead of tracking and keep up to this date different UI states and data. This is the value proposition of this. So I am quite familiar of having to manage all of these different states, which is not an easy thing to do. Let's get into it.
So earlier we talked about some prerequisites for the workshop, but this is where I kind of want to start us as far as ground zero goes. As long as you have familiarity with HTML foundations, no build tools are needed. So, you to basically work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up my playground HTML file inside Fresh. I mentioned before, and if we go to the guide, quick start. Let's see. Here we go. There's a section here that says guide. I believe it's under quick start. We'll see. Here we go. There's a section here that says using Vue from the CDN. And all we're going to do is we're going to copy this line right here and drop it into our HTML file.
So let's actually play with this, right? It's gonna go here, all right, and say, hey, it's gonna open a new code pen, that's right. Here, it's gonna open a new code pen here. We'll need to we'll need is take a look at the repo here that we're gonna work with, which is I didn't add it to? Okay.
So, story time. When I first started getting started with coding, I was one of those people who thought that welcome everyone to the complete intro to Vue 3. My name is Ben Hong, and I'm excited to spend the next couple days with you as we go over the fundamentals of Vue and just get you all set up so that you feel confident trying out Vue for your next project. So, the question here is, what do you need to know to really get started with Vue? And so earlier we talked about some prerequisites for the workshop, but this is where I kind of want to start us as far as ground zero goes. As long as you have familiarity with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you have familiarity with the code editor, that is all you need. And that might come as a surprise to people because a lot of times when we think about frameworks, we are thinking about it from a build tool perspective. But we're going to go ahead and show you how this approach works and why it's actually a viable approach when it comes to a lot of organizations looking to either progressively migrate their apps into a framework. So here's your Morpheus meme from Matrix. What if I told you no build tools were needed? And so again, some of you will be understandably skeptical, but we're going to actually experience this live ourselves and go through what this is like. So with that said, has everyone had a chance to basically, we talked for a little bit now, let's dive right into some code and check this out. So inside of here, you'll notice that there's very little going on in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up my playground HTML file inside of the browser over here. And so to make sure everything's working, I'm just going to go ahead and do an H1, hello, front end masters.
Let me actually get this.
There we go. Okay. Dev environment set up, no build tools required. Great. Now, when we...
Okay, and when we save this, we're supposed to see this as the Vue 3 playground. right now I'm not able to see anything, which is quite weird. Oh, there might be some gotchas here. You know what? Let me actually use this now, Code Sandbox, for this. Yeah, let me actually use Code Sandbox here. Let me create a new one. Just HTML here and say, hey, this will be now Vue 3 workshop, right? So, all right. So this is a simple HTML, that's right, but I wanted to put is this here. So save this, and then you got is this playground complete intro to Vue 3. That's all. That's the only thing that I want to do, right? Just like that. So just render this particular document. I don't know why it's not. Is there any issue here? Oh, it's because on the preview. Exactly. On the okay, exactly. Good. So I'm gonna say hey, hello from the master. Okay. Say hey, hello front end masters. Right? Good. Now when I render this, I'm gonna see is this, but I don't wanna show this with any underline, that kind of thing. So remove this. There you got it. Just like that. Good. So this is just to see how we can now use is our Vue application here. We take a look now at the quick start, and then you do this, try Vue Online, creating a Vue application using Vue from the CDN, like so, right? Because the whole point of this is to now use this as a CDN, right? The thing here is that we can use this using the global build right now, or using is the CDN. Here we're using the PK, but you can use any CDN as you see fit. It can be GS Deliver or CDN, that kind of thing. So the idea here is that we are not using is a build step, which is great. You know, which is great, bro. Using the global build, right?
It happened. We're actually going to go ahead and open up our browser console. And you'll notice here that one, it's already alerting us that we're running a development build of Vue.
So let's take a look at this. Is this actually true with, oh my God. Okay, we're gonna have a couple trouble here. Yeah, we gotta have a couple troubles here, especially when we need to take a look at the spec here. There you got it. So if we change this, it will re-render that. That's right. And as you can see, it says, hey, you are running a development build of Vue. All right, so make sure to use the production build when deploying for production. Actually, it's telling you this one, right? So you are running a development build. This is something interesting. It tells you in the console that you are now running into this. So far, so good. And one of the great things is that from there we can start just similar when we do that with React. Okay, when we need to install is the small surface API, which is the React, and then the render, the DOM render, because there are several renders out there that allow you to use, that allow you to go with React. So React is the API surface developers, and the and the render actually is the one who's going to communicate with that particular rendering mechanism. In this case, the DOM, which is the browser. It can be also the 360, for example, for VR and AR, or the mobile development as well using React Native. So, all right.
In other words, if we're going to deploy this, we're going to need to use a production deployment because this is.
So here we don't need to actually install anything of that. You just import this, and again remember that at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a reactive compiler optimized rendering system, as we get here. Yeah, because I take notes out of this, so that makes a lot of sense. Rendering system, rendering system.
The size is a bit larger, but this is fine because we're learning right now. So the way you can check that also that this is working is if you type view, it'll autocomplete, and you'll notice it'll basically bring up the view object that's ready for you to do stuff with it. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and just show you basically how that kind of works. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a div, and just like you typically would expect, I'm going to call it the div app. That's all we're going to do. And then we're going to say my app in here, save it, we refresh, there you go, my app is showing up here. And now let's go to actually attach our app, and how do we do that? So what we're going to do now is we're going to open up a script block at the bottom, and we're actually going to go ahead and bring in a function from Vue called create app. So I'm going to create a constant, and I'm going to destructure it from Vue, so it's going to look like this. Now this is an alternative syntax of basically just calling create app like this.
Exactly.
Calling the function.
So this is not the way of how we
but
can
there'll be an advantage
attach to
from, like, a
this.
syntax perspective, so that's why we're destructuring the function out. And all we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say const app.
So in our particular case, let me go to this to actually, now that we already import this below our body, or below here, we can say, hey, let's go to now import this script, define this script here. Okay. And let's go into actually start to use in now Vue. So if you can see here, if we can now go to this and say, hey, I want to make access to Vue. It's a Vue is not a reference. What about Vue? What about Vue? Really? I don't have access to Vue? That's interesting. Even though that I imported that, I don't have access to Vue, or at least not here. Really? Interesting. Okay. Okay, there you got it. As you can see here is this, right? Is Vue. So Vue is this huge object that now is exposing all of this. Remember that at the end of the day, this is a reactive compiler optimized rendering system. As you can see, you have now, for example, create comment node, create element block, create app, which is what we're gonna do, and among other things like this, right? Create server-side app, custom graph, define emits, define expose, define models, and all of these kind of things, effect scope, get current scope. As you can see, all of the things that are needed when it comes to actually build this kind of application. Handle error, has inject context, hide rotate, which is the process of how you can now add interactivity to an HTML. Is proxy, is reactive. So all of this property. On behavior, so now you have some particular hooks as it is. So you got now reactive and read only, that kind of thing. Shallow ref. Okay. Stop to display this key, blah blah blah, and all of this kind of things. Watch with with Mimo, with modifiers. All right, but again, what we want to do is to actually connect is with the DOM, right? And say, hey, let me now create is this div here with an ID of app, where here's when it's going to start is adding and connecting my instance of view with the DOM. So I'm gonna do that. Well, I want to now actually is from view get is the create app, right? This is one way you can do this. You can say is like this. Okay, I want to now get the create app for me, right? And the question is how do I connect that? Well, similar the way how you connect with React, which is by saying, hey, create root render with this elements. Here we say create app, and then we pass this the ID, right? So here we say, hey, create the app. Okay, we're gonna pass now the options here. Okay, where all top level API are exposed and global property to the view objects. That's going now to create an instance here that is using now the setup and all that kind of thing.
Equals create app. And so what that'll do is it'll create a variable called app, and then it'll go ahead and create said app. And all we're going to do now is we're going to mount, because what we got to do, we got to tell Vue where it is we want to actually put the app. So that is where this mount keyword comes in, and we're going to mount it to the app dot.
So this is quite similar in terms of, so after you create this, which is your app. So after you create this, so let's now actually to tell, hey, I want you to mount this on this, right? On the app as it is. So far so good, because now if we want to connect something,
ID of app, which is using the CSS selector here, that'll mount it directly into this part. So
this is quite similar to how we're going to do this with React, right? Because I would like to also is see how we actually, just for demo purpose, just for recap that, how do we actually is now mount this component. So you got now the API here, create portal is in fact the client API no, server API no, and overview no, components, hooks, okay, this is the reference, right? APIs, okay. Oh my god, no, it's not components, it's APIs here. Client APIs and server APIs, directive legacy React APIs. But this is the hooks. Is hooks, components, API, directive. Come on. Components and hook must be pure. Create root, bro. Exactly. It's on the client's API. Okay, this is now how we're going to say, hey, I want you to now is from this I elements, I want you to mount the entire elements, which is now create the root DOM. Okay, hey, this will be the root DOM where we're gonna now rendering all of these elements. But now here we're saying, hey, this is where we're going to mount this instance that'll be accessible for all of this. You know what I mean?
So in 3 lines of code, we have dropped the view, or I guess 4 if you include the CDN. We've loaded view onto the page, and we basically created that. So if we refresh it, we'll notice nothing's really happening. And that's totally fine because we haven't had view display anything yet. And so when it comes to frameworks, one of the things that people love about working with frameworks is that it really helps to track your data across different states. So that's called reactive data. So the fact that when something changes, it'll go ahead and make sure that your HTML page is updated as expected. So the way we're going to do this is inside of our create app, we're going to pass it an object. And this object is going to allow us to configure things about our app. So think of it as a configuration object. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass it a data option. And what we're going to do is this is going to be a function that returns an object. And so if we think about what's going on here, basically we're saying, hey, Vue, we want you to create an app that's going to have a data property. And the reason we're using a function here is because we want to actually basically maintain the reactivity in terms of like tracking the latest instance of that object. Because if you were to do something instead, like just data, is because we wanted to actually basically maintain the reactivity in terms of like tracking the latest instance of that object.
So here it is interesting here because they want us to tracking the latest instance of that.
Because if you were to do something instead, like just data like this, the data becomes stale over time and there becomes like caching issues. And so it's become kind of best practice across frameworks that when you're managing data, you actually have it be a function that returns an object, and then the framework will take care of it from there.
Okay. But there is something here where they describe briefly that is quite important. Well, actually they use now is the data. So let me using as the option API here. Like that, you use now the data, the option API. You're gonna return this message, hello, that kind of thing. Or you can use the ES model build as well to say, hey, let's going to now use this and now import that from there, right? And then now create this data binding, enabling import maps here. So in the above example, we're importing from the full CDN URL, but in the rest of the documentation, you will see code like this. We can teach the browser where to locate the Vue imports by using is import map, which is part of the browser's now functionality when it comes to actually use this. Import maps. You say import maps allow control over what URL gets fetched by JavaScript import statement or import expression. Okay, as a way to tell now the as a way now to tell is the browser, hey, I will allow you to use this. This is newly available. Very, very interesting. It's like, hey, this will be the location of our JavaScript when we want to import that. Okay, import map. The script tag import map. Okay, hey browser. Okay, this is the way how you tell the browser, hey browser, if you see an import in JavaScript with the view matching here, this is the URL. Import map. An import map is a JSON object that allows the developer to control how the browser resolve model specified when importing JavaScript models. But you can also put it like this, and this will also works. But this is, yeah, yes, and these models must be ES compatible. This model must be ESM compatible. In other words, is that, hey, I want to make these specific models to follow this import and export syntax, right? To follow the import and export syntax like this. Exactly. This is a background of models, and introducing an example here, a simple set of examples here, a basic example of structure. You have the M and several models here. So the models directed to models are describing like this. Oh, this is to see is all of these models, how you can define these models here. but it must have an import and export. Exactly. Whether it's export, okay, or import, but they must follow is the that particular syntax. So aside of .mgs versus GSS, throughout the article we have used the GSX extension, which is this, the GSS extension model, but in other resources you may see that the MGS extension used instead. V8 documentation recommend this, for example. Exactly. So we recommend using the .mgs extension for model for two reasons. During development, it is much more crystal clear that this is now a model, ES6 model, right? And ensure that your file is parsed as a model by runtimes, such as Node.js and D8, which is dnode. Oh no. Okay. It's good for clarity and make it clear which files are model and which are regular JavaScript. It ensures that your model files are parsed and modeled by runtime such as Node.js and build tools such as Babel. However, we decide to keep using the JS at least for the moment, and that kind of thing. This is okay if you're using such an environment, blah, blah, blah. But in any case, this is now how we instruct the browser. Hey, in this case, we just telling is the way this, how we can import that. But if we pass now an import map, we say, hey, script import map, and we pass now this JSON that we're gonna put is this key value as the name of the name of the import, followed by the URL, and then in our import below we actually indicate that as a model, okay, that type model. This is also how we can actually use that. But all of this is because the way how now browsers needs to translate JavaScript models from different JavaScript files, right? Why is this? Because back in the old days, we didn't have anything like models. We have to use something called the immediately invoked function expressions that go beyond the scope of this course, but it's important to understand that that thing exists. Okay. All right, fellas. So, something that he mentioned, right? Split up the models here. But I think something that he mentioned here, notes of production use. The example so far is using the development build. Whenever it's possible to use Vue without a build system, an alternative approach to consider is using Vue, JS Petit Vue. That could be better suit context where jQuery in the past or Alpine JS in the present might be used. And jQuery. And Alpine. Yesterday. Alpine component pattern. Yeah, there's a huge amount of components out there. Blah, 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 blah. Exactly. There's a huge amount of components out there to do that. Last week, make middleware mock server not crash on reading non-existent files. Meeting occurring health on the matrix or platform. Meetings. That's very, very interesting. An open network for secure decentralized communication. Okay. All right, slowly but progressive, things started to make a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Yep, a lot of sense. Oh my god. Okay, cool. Absolutely. Go on.
for you. And so in this
He mentioned
this
something
object
here.
allows to configure things. Nothing's really happening, and that's totally fine because we haven't had view display anything yet. And so when it comes to frameworks, one of the things that people love about working with frameworks is that it really helps to track your data across different states. So
Yeah. Well, allegedly, right? It's developer position. We talk about now with the prerequisites, something that I already mentioned before here. Okay, and we're starting to now look at this, creating a view app, right? So this is creating a view app. There you got it. And that's right, the directive. So,
we haven't had view display anything yet. And so when it comes to frameworks, one of the things that people love about working with frameworks is that it really helps to track your data across different states. So
when it comes to work with frameworks, one of the things that people love is to have the ability to keep track statement, which is exactly what so for example, libraries like Redux provide you that. You just only define the state. Okay, you just define exactly. So you define your state, your actions, and the reducer functions. So when we talk about reducer, is that what is the thing that we're going to compose for this? What is the thing that we're going to combine, we compose this? What is the end result for all of these transformations? And what is going to compose this? You define your state, your actions, and reducer functions. And in return, you get a predictable. So you define your state, your actions, and render functions. And by using the flux architecture, okay, in return, you get a predictive state update. So you get a predicted new state. You get a predictable and trackable new state, right?
that's called reactive data. So the fact that when something changes, it'll go ahead and make sure that your HTML page is updated as expected. So the way we're going to do this is inside.
So the way how Vue does that is by defining is an object inside of the create app, okay, is by defining an object inside of the create app like this. Exactly. Instead of the create app to define this reactivity. Okay. And it means that this reactivity, the ability to change, the ability to track and reflect the change of a state in HTML. The ability to track and reflect the state of a state in JavaScript to HTML, because that's the point of this. Is the ability to keep track the state change. Is the ability to keep track the state change of the state in JavaScript to HTML, right? Is the ability to track, exactly. Is the ability to track. Is the ability to track the state change in JavaScript and reflect it into the HTML. That's the whole point of this. If this data changes on the JavaScript, it will reflect on the HTML, and so on and so forth, right? So this thing that can be magical stuff behind the scene is using something that is a proxy, which is now a built-in tool that allowing JavaScript to actually say, hey, we can have access to this native these native objects that allow us to actually intersect any of these internal objects, internal method objects, or some of the common internal objects as a way to now is define some sort of behavior before that happened, right? So here is when we have now this ability to actually keep track is the state change.
Instead of our create app, we're going to pass it an object.
So it means that, for example, if here we define is, let me close this because I'm not using this, and they're actually going to charge me is for the amount of time that I'm using that I have that instance open. This is the pain point, the research, code sandbox, right? Code sandbox. Yeah, is that code sandbox? What's the next one? Yeah, code sandbox. Complete intro to Vue 3 workshop. Exactly. This is GitHub repo. Right. There you got it.
And this object is going to allow us to configure things about our app. So think of it as a configuration object. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass it a data option. And what we're going to do is this is going to be a function that returns an object. And so if we think about what's going on here, basically we're saying, hey, Vue, we want you to create an app that's going to have a data property. And the reason we're using a function here is because we wanted to actually basically maintain the reactivity in terms of like tracking the latest instance of that object. Because if you were to do something.
So as a way to now provide this interactivity here in the context of Vue, you say, hey, let's going to put it now this data as a function, all right, that we're going to return is something here, where we say, hey, message with the text of hey. And as a way to now reflect those chains on the DOM, and to connect that to the DOM, we say under the entry point of our application, which is when we're saying, hey, from this starting HTML, you will have access to this instance here. So for example, if we say something like this, right, we say, hey, this, and say, hey, I would like you to show this message here, right? And when we save this, you say, hey, I don't have that. But because now here we're saying, hey, this will be the entry point that these elements and all of the child elements will have access to this data. Now you are going to see this data in real action, right? So far so good. And the reason of using is this. Okay. Value proposition, creating a view React app. For example, like this. Okay. So the idea of passing an object with the data as a function is to have the ability to keep track things. Its ability to keep track things in a reliable way. Because if you pass an object, the data becomes stale, right?
Instead, like just data like this, the data becomes stale over time, and there becomes like caching issues, and so it's become kind of.
The data becomes stale over time, and this is because how they're managing this mechanism.
Across frameworks, that when you're managing data, you actually have it be a function that returns an object, and then the framework will take care of it from there for you. And so in this, let's go ahead and just add a message here, and this time I'll just say, hello, it works. Okay, so now here we have our reactive data message, and the question is, how are we going to actually render that inside of our app? Well, the way we're going to do that is we're going to be using the curly brace syntax. So this is specific to, well, actually, this has been a fairly common syntax language, but as far as like the three frameworks are concerned, this one, Vue uses the double curly brace. And all we type is message. That's all it is.
Here, this is a subtle difference here. Vue uses a double curly brackets, where now in GSX, all right? Now let me actually create now an example here for the GSX. When here I just want to actually see the difference between one and another framework. Say, hello. So, hey, it works, right? Or you can say, hey, hello there. View 3 here, working. You know, you say view 3 here, working. So you save this, and now we're going to, in another dashboard here, by saying is that, hey, I would like you to create now, but this time is for React, okay? By saying is React 18, right? React 18 core, a React 18 workshop. That's right. So the way how can we now use React, plain React without any build tools and none of that kind of things, is like this. So the installation here, how to start a new React project. Can I use a React without a framework? Please be my guest. The problem are not what is it? You can definitely use React without a framework. That's how you use React for a part of your page, right? However, if you're building new apps or a site fully with React, we recommend using a framework. But in this case, I don't want to do that, right? Start a new project. Add React to existing projects. Because you now require a build step, but I don't want to actually do that. The question is that how do okay. Okay. Build the React part of your application using one of the React based frameworks. No, I don't want to. This ensures the React part you can benefit from best practice. Not at all. Start a new project, production grade React frameworks, next Git remix, expo for that bleeding edge React, Next.js app. This is quite interesting. So I can use that. And we recommend using a framework if you're building a new app or a site fully with React. But if I'm not, these problems are not React specific. This is why Svelte has SvelteKit, Vue has Nox, and so on. To solve this problem on your own, you will need to integrate your bundler, React frameworks on this page. Solve problem like this by default with no extra work from your side. Exactly. But what if I want to actually is full architecture vision? Which features makes up the React team full stack architecture vision? And that's interesting. That's very, very interesting. So if I want to actually import this, I can, bro? That's the question. You say, I can, bro? Really? I really can, bro? Jesus. What if I want to now say, hey, React, Jesus, React import. Wow. React npm. Okay. Because I will need this is create new React app. But all of them say, hey, you need a Jesus. All of they say is like you need is a build tool. That's to me bullshit. Okay. My God. That's not something to laugh. That's definitely not something to laugh, bro. I mean, for real. I mean, for real. I mean, for real, man. It's like, the French toast is this? One of the contributors, Sophie Bits, Khan Academy. She what? Is one of the owners of this? I know collaborators. React bot. This is something interesting. How can I access to There you got a single file builds. Okay, this is to actually access the, exactly, this is from production. Oh my god. Okay, let's get into this, because I want to now create is this. There you got it. Okay. Hey, howdy. Hello there. Okay, if I want to now use React here as just a single bundle, what I have to do is to install those scripts here. All right, which means that I'm going to block this until all of this has been parsed, right? Which is something that you might not want to do that. So it means that you might want to do is this after you render the entire HTML document, you process that, and then you now is handle the script for that. So by the time you're doing this, you say, hey, let me now create a script, okay, that instead of using the production here, I would like to use is just the, cannot find this mean, well, okay. However, if those files doesn't end with that, how can I call it? Well, how can I call this UMP? Okay, React production, React development, and also I need to call is the render as well. The React DOM render. Which is React development here. Exactly, which contains all of this. So now you can have access to all of this different data that is access to this. All right. So if I do this, and then now I pass this URL here. Exactly, which is the raw. And that's right. So if I want to do this, to actually import that from development, and I doing this explicitly for development, you can also do something like this, and I'm doing this for the development, so we can now is in fact access to the development build. In this case, for that React 18, React DOM 18 on PK, on PKG, that's right. But I want to access is the development. All right, which as you can see, it weighs 1 megabyte. That's why you shouldn't use that in production. But again, we are using this just for demo purposes, right? So once the browser parses this, you can say, all right, browser, okay, now I want is to actually console.log the React. You know, so say, hey, it's React. Do we have React available? That's a good, something interesting to know. And there you got it. We got React available, component, fragment, all of that kind of thing. So now if we want to actually mount this component, okay, one of the ways of doing that is by say, hey, using React as a part of an existing page, is by saying is this, hey, I want you to now is create the root element here. We can use this now the particular way of doing this. But if we say, hey, this will be use an import, all right, we have to make sure that we are getting is a ESM, not a unified this. But because of that, what we can do is to say, hey, I want to get now is the React here, okay, which is now the React from React, okay. But from there, I want to now is get the create root, right? Something that it comes from here. So I want to create the root, okay. I also want is to now add this particular tag here by saying, hey, this will be the entry point of our application, where now React will be available from this portion and on, from this DOM tree and on, all right? And the way to notify that is by using the create root and then append that element to that, which is interesting. As you can see here, we say, hey, we can say, hey, create root, okay, and let's go into now append that element, which is the entry point, which is the root element. So root element, we say, hey, document, I want to extract this document, get element by ID, because this is way much more faster to do that. We say, hey, this will be the app, all right, and this is now the root element that I'm going to pass here, right? But this is not enough, because okay, we now tell React, hey, this will be is the entry point of our application. But what we're going to render, you might wonder, right? That is when we say, hey, let's go to now render this. We say root, okay. We say root element. We say root element render here is this particular element here that we got here, which is this one, by saying, hey, hello world. Say, hey, I want you to now render is this element here. And say, hey, this is a React UI. This is React, right? So it's supposed to get element that render that, document get element by id dot app, okay, and on this root element we want is to actually is this is create root. Oh, but this is the React DOM client. Okay, makes sense. It's the React DOM client. So how can we now access to the React DOM client? All right. Because this is the React, exactly, not the root client. Okay. React DOM client. Okay, React DOM client. How to access to the React DOM client in a script. Holy moly. Exactly. And then here you say create React DOM. Okay, makes sense. Okay. And React DOM. It's a React DOM that allows to create this. And if we want to create now elements here or just UI elements, we just say, hey, this will be a function that'll be is or UI. Let's say this is the home page. Okay, that will contain is this, but we want is to now is return this. So a much friendly way to do this is say, hey, it's gonna return is this home page. That'll be an arrow function that doesn't have is the argument values, and the value of this is lexical scope. So by doing is this, we say, hey, I want you to return this. Okay. And this is what we're gonna render here as it is. So it still doesn't work. Da, da, da. React DOM. I just want to see if that actually exists as expected. Okay. Of course, it crashed. It say, hey, error on support. Oh, okay. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, that's going to call this function, right? And here we're gonna say, hey, this will be the name of this function, followed by the this particular GSX tag that we want to actually render, right? Which is this one. So if we save this and we try to render this, it's interesting because React DOM actually exists. As especially React root element or render is not a function. Interesting. So it seems that we have to do is something like this. React.render for that. Okay. And then say React.create root. And do this. I'm not sure if render exists. Yeah, render the element, the container, and the callback. If the following code doesn't show. Oh, makes sense. It's because we need to call this as it is. Exactly. Nope. Hmm. Hmm. I create the root element. Why not? What if I now move to code pen? Okay. And from here I say, hey, I want to import now this. Okay. Some props and some content here. Now this is working. Okay. All right. This is working. Jesus. Anyway. So by the time you save this, this is actually working as expected. So when you save this, now it will say, hey, this is a React component after all. This is quite interesting. Very, very interesting. In terms of how you can now create a basic user interface in React, all right, as well as how you can do that in Vue, right? As well as how you can do that in Vue. And that'll be all for this video, because this is just an introduction of how you can do this.
So just based on this, for those who have been working with web apps for a while, you might already start to realize there's a lot of flexibility with this. Because now all of a sudden, if you have a backend that's not quite ready to integrate all the build tools and everything you need to get it up and running, you can just on a specific page, when you're proposing to start progressively migrating your apps, you can say on this page, we're gonna drop the CDN and we're gonna add the basically interactivity to this page, and over time we'll migrate away, and then once we have enough pages that consolidate that view, then we can actually invest the time to do the build tools. Because I think a lot of times when we think about migration, a lot of times developers are thinking code freeze everything, no new features, and we just stop development. And we know that practically speaking, that just rarely works for business. And so this is a really great way for us to basically go ahead and migrate an enterprise app over to something that might use more modern framework technologies. Now that said, we have a message here. Now what if we want...
And this is something interesting, because as you mentioned, as he described here, this is now from and I want to make this distinction here. Create Vue app here. This is Vue and Vue example, okay? Vue example. And the other is that React example. Vue basic example, and this is now React basic example. And I want to bring this up as a way to understand now how in the F do we get here. You know, it's like, how in the F do we get here? And this is very, very important. And this is very, 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 very important. So as we migrate, this is something that allows us a great flexibility. That is something that when you want to integrate code in your project progressively with Vue, you can slowly add it as a CDN. Allegedly, with Vue you can slowly add it as a CDN. Okay, so with Vue you can slowly So with Vue you can slowly add it as a CDN. All right. With Vue you can slowly add it as a CDN to your page and make everything that works. Make everything that works, and then make everything that works. Make everything works, and then move on to the next page, and ultimately migrate to build tools when you see fit. Because a lot of the time it's because this is mergers of complexity. because a lot of the time it's not feasible to stop development just for it's not feasible to stop development just for the sake of migrate a functionality or a page.
Wanted to, let's say, show or hide it based on whether or not the message is even or not. Well, something that Vue is also known for are their directives. And so for those who have come from Angular, this might look a little familiar. So the way that it works is that we basically would have a normal HTML element. So let's wrap this in a p element. And then this one we're going to say even. And this one we're going to say odd. Okay? And so the idea here being that what we'd like to do is if the message.length is even, show the even keyword, otherwise show the odd keyword. And so one way we can do this is we can use something called Vue directives. And the way it works is it's basically an attribute you add on an HTML element, and it's prefixed with v dash. So in this case, if I go v dash if equals message.length, and I'll use the modulo 2 equals 0 to determine that it's even, and then otherwise v else, it'll display the other thing. So if we refresh this, we'll see, okay, there we go. We'll notice that it is currently odd. And so now if I delete the exclamation mark, that should bring us over to even. And so what we see here is, again, one of the things I talked about when it came to Vue is that it builds on top of what you already know. And so when most people are working with HTML and CSS, there's a lot of value in extending upon people's existing knowledge when it comes to extending APIs. And so in this regard, by basically having the convention of the v dash, and then using the if-else statements, again, if you know JavaScript, in fact, you don't even need to know JavaScript. People would actually understand this property, granted, maybe not this part, but when people are navigating the HTML, they would actually understand what's going on here, rather than if you had kind of big if-else blocks that have a bunch of functions in it, which again, I think sometimes we find is a little bit tricky with, I think, sort of React components. Those can be harder to follow, especially if you don't have as much experience with JavaScript. But this here keeps a semantic, concise way of telling people what's going on. Now, the other directive that I want to talk about is this one. But before we do that, here's a slide to talk about this. And this is from a while ago from Sansacone. And what it says here is that 99.7% of software development in one requirement. A user should be able to view a list of items. And I still think that's incredibly relevant today, right? That's what we're doing half the time. We're taking a bunch of data, rendering out a list. And I don't know about you all, but when I was doing this in React originally, I realized there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I know that there's more of a best practice now, but that can be confusing for users, especially if they have a function that runs the map, or maybe in this case, use the for loop. There's a lot of kind of deciding what to do. And so let's go ahead and show how rendering a list works in Vue. So in this case, I'm just going to do a list of numbers here, just to keep it easy. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we have an array here. And then what we're going to do here is we're just going to do an unordered list. And then what are we trying to repeat, right? We're trying to repeat the list item. So what we're going to have is, if you might want to guess, is that we have the v-for directive, right? Using the for loop concept from JavaScript. And what are we looping for? For every number in list of numbers, we're going to go ahead and just put the number. That's it. And if you refresh, there you go. Done.
The way how you do that here on JavaScript in React is by rendering is this list of elements, so defining is this list, and then during the rendering, you're going now to map all of these elements and show them in the proper element, show using a proper element here.
Your list is rendered. It's fantastic. And so what's really nice about this, once again, is that we are trying to extend upon people's base knowledge of JavaScript without getting too much in the weeds. Again, the syntax is written in a way that's approachable for people to sort of like in plain English, really. For number in list of numbers, print number. Great, I understand what that means, even if I don't know JavaScript.
That'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye-bye.